one of the worst cars of the modern era.
In 2013, Top Gear called the Chrysler PT Cruiser convertible the worst car of the last 20 years. The PT Cruiser has long been an easy target for cruel and bitter criticism. It's cheap and easy to label something as purely awful. Some people just love to hate. But is this vitriol deserved? Today, we're gonna find out. Now, I'll admit, I've never really paid much attention to the PT Cruiser. The styling never resonated with me, but it never boiled over to the point of passionate loathing. I just figured I wasn't the target audience. They sold over 1.3 million PT Cruisers. Clearly, somebody must have loved them. But why? What was the appeal? Why did some people adore these things and others absolutely loathed it? Today, let's spend some time in this near-mint 2005 Chrysler PT Cruiser Convertible GT and get to the bottom of this. But before we go for a drive, I feel like I need to change my wardrobe just a touch so I suit this car a little bit better. All right, I think that's a little bit more like it. Let's go. In the late 90s, car designers started huffing big old cans of nostalgia, perhaps as a reaction to the many ovoid jelly bean shaped cars that permeated the end of that decade. Retro style designs were all the rage. We got the hot rod inspired Plymouth Prowler, the new Beetle, the new Mini Cooper, with more to come in subsequent years. While the Beetle and the Mini were essentially sequels of the originals, the PT Cruiser didn't have any direct lineage to a specific vehicle. Inspired by the designs of the 30s and 40s with a nod to the hot rod culture of the 1950s, it was its own thing. When the PT Cruiser first went on sale for the 2001 model year, demand was through the roof. Chrysler sold a ton of these things. Dealers were charging well over sticker price. People were lining up from all over to get their hands on one. Car and Driver named the 2001 PT Cruiser one of their 10 best vehicles of the year. That same year, it won the North American Car of the Year award. Sales remained strong over the next several years. A turbocharged version was introduced. This convertible was introduced. Though over time, an increasing number of PT Cruisers were sold to rental car fleets, and Chrysler resorted to incentives and lower prices to motivate sales. In 2008, sales tanked to about a third of its peak, and by the end of the decade, it was clear that the party was over. Today, there are still some hardcore enthusiasts of the PT, but the prevailing sentiment is that these are rolling piles of garbage. With such a positive launch in the early 2000s and years of strong sales, how did the reputation of the PT Cruiser get tarnished so badly? And this convertible, can it really be as bad as Top Gear made it out to be? Even though PT Cruiser numbers are dwindling as many of these are reaching the end of their serviceable lives, we've all likely seen countless examples dotting the roads over the years. So many that its retro styling just started to become normal. So let's dial back our minds 15 to 20 years where this would have been seen as fresh. The PT was actually quite unique for the era. There wasn't really anything else on the road like it. Reviews were actually positive. It was regarded as cute, adorable, and fun. And the convertible, first introduced in 2005, took this design to a whole new extreme. This isn't simply a PT Cruiser without a roof. From the cowl back, it's significantly different than the standard PT Cruiser. It's also nearly 2.5 inches lower, giving it a slightly more aggressive stance. I guess aggressive for something that kind of looks like a bathtub. The windshield is lower, the doors are longer. In fact, more than half of its parts are unique from the standard PT. The proportions of this convertible are definitely strange. It's kind of like a supermarket shopping basket on wheels. The sport bar right in the middle here looks like a nice convenient handle to pick the thing up, making it kind of look like a toy car for giants. Yep, that's what this car looks like to me, a toy car for giants. The 2005 PT Cruiser convertible was the only year with the original exterior and interior design. The PT got a facelift in 2006 that changed the headlights, grille, bumpers, and interior design. But this attempt to modernize the look didn't go over well with PT superfans. Now, about this body-colored sport bar. It offers no safety features or rollover protection. It's there mainly to provide some additional structural rigidity and reduce wind noise for passengers, and to make the car look like a giant shopping basket. The GT comes with 17-inch wheels in very 2000 era chrome with disc brakes all around. But what makes this GT a little bit more special is what's underneath the hood. The base convertible came with the same 150 horsepower, 2.4 liter four-cylinder found in the standard PT, which certainly won't win you any drag races. The touring trim added a turbo and bumped that up to 180 horsepower. But this here is the top spec PT Cruiser convertible, the GT. Making 220 horsepower and 245 pound-feet of torque, it's the same power plant found in the very capable Dodge Neon SRT4. So this isn't just a retro oddball convertible. It's an oddball retro convertible with some decent power under the hood, at least by 2005 standards. The GT came standard with a 5-speed manual, and we've got the optional 4-speed automatic here. And it's got sport shifting, they call it auto stick, which is not really very fun or useful in this car, but it's got it. While it can get to 60 miles an hour pretty quickly in about the 7-second range, this front-wheel drive platform exhibits a bit of torque steer, actually kind of a lot of torque steer depending on the situation, and it doesn't really feel all that fast, at least by today's standards. The GT does come with sport-tuned suspension, but handling isn't exactly its top strength. There's quite a bit of body roll in the turns. It's clearly no Miata, but the drivetrain does make it somewhat fun to go fast in a straight line. In 2005, the base convertible started at just under 20 grand, which was pretty affordable for a convertible back then. In fact, it was the least expensive 4-passenger convertible sold in North America. This top trim GT would have run you 28 grand, which was starting to get pretty expensive, a fair amount more than the Beetle or Mini Cooper convertibles. But it was well received by the automotive press when it was first announced. Car and Driver called it cute, quick, and practical, in that there's, quote, no denying its charm. They even thought the convertible looked better than the wagon. MotorWeek said that it was the, quote, most adorable drop top to hit the market since the original Mazda Miata back in 1990. Strong words there, John Davis, strong words. In the PT wagons, it was hard to beat the insane configurability of the interior. In some ways, the PT Cruiser was a crossover before crossovers were even a thing. This convertible loses much of that configurability and flexibility, but to be fair, this was a lot more practical than most convertibles that were sold at the time. Chrysler said that they wanted this to be a convertible that you could actually do things with, and I think they were right. Even in this convertible, the seats can be folded down and flipped up, and there's a pass-through to the trunk for long items, which is pretty cool. The trunk is still tiny and lifts up in this odd way, which looks cool, but is not really very usable because it often gets in the way of you actually loading things. But it still offered more cargo space than many other convertibles at the time. And tons of legroom for rear seat passengers. The only downside is you have to duck under this bar to get back there. The other thing that Chrysler touted at the time was how quiet this thing was. Back in the day, Car and Driver reported that with the top up, it was quieter inside this cabin than a Cadillac CTS-V, which is obviously a vehicle with an actual roof. So that was quite an accomplishment. With the top up, you've actually got a ton of headroom in here. I'm 6'3", and I'm way less claustrophobic in this than other convertibles with a roof up. Inside, we've got this retro 4-spoke steering wheel wrapped in leather, and of course these colored inserts on the dash. The quality is clearly early 2000s Chrysler with cheap feeling plastics and large panel gaps. I feel like if you look at it wrong, it might break. This GT also has a few additional luxurious touches. We've got these nice leather seats with power lumbar. We've also got side airbags, which is a nice touch. Quite a few vehicles from this era didn't have them. And this optional GPS navigation system. That was a pretty big deal back then, and yes, it still works. Not very useful by today's standards, but pretty cool nonetheless. Oh, and check this out. The owner of this PT has a few accessories, like this picnic basket that was given to some dealerships when the car debuted, and a remote-controlled PT Cruiser, because everyone needs one of those. Reliability of the PT can be a concern. There are some common issues that pop up. The motor crammed into this small engine bay can make anything beyond routine maintenance a bit tough. While those original owner PT Cruiser superfans likely took very good care of these things, they're now likely on their third and fourth owner, and it's very possible that by now there's been some deferred maintenance on these things. The newest PT Cruiser is already 10 years old, and many of these things are approaching 20. That is, if they're still on the road. I've actually never seen a PT Cruiser convertible in a junkyard, but I've seen countless wagons there. Even so, there's still quite a few PTs on the road today, so clearly they are capable of lasting. To me, this is a story about Chrysler getting it so right, yet getting it so very wrong. What did they get right? The PT Cruiser was affordable and extremely practical, even this convertible. And for a certain demographic, the styling was a perfect fit, which led to Chrysler selling millions of these things. So what did they get wrong? I think the primary reason why this vehicle elicits such hate is entirely because Chrysler completely bungled the positioning and marketing of this thing. Chrysler mistakenly targeted young, first-time car buyers. For some reason, they thought a car that elicited nostalgia for the 1930s and 40s would actually appeal to young adults that were born in the 80s. This is like an automotive embodiment of that Steve Buscemi meme. How do you do, fellow kids? Isn't this 1930s van design with a nod to 50s hot rod culture like totally super cool? Chrysler's marketing photos even showed young kids loading up flame-painted surfboards. In this picture, I can hear this guy's thoughts clearly. Hot rod flames on a surfboard? This is so lame. Why do they make us wear Hawaiian shirts again? This is like your dad trying to pick out school clothes for you at JCPenney's in the 7th grade. No, Dad, that shirt sucks. I wouldn't be caught dead wearing it. And surprise, people that actually lived through the 30s, the 40s, and the 50s, they loved the thing. The PT was the perfect car for the retiree that still wanted to get noticed. The average buyer skewed way older than Chrysler intended. For someone that graduated high school in the 50s or 60s, the PT Cruiser was the first car in decades that resembled the cars of their younger days. And that core group of enthusiasts reliving their youth, they were incredibly excited about this thing. Maybe if Chrysler had just pitched it to old folks to begin with, it would have been more accepted in the marketplace. The other thing that worked against the PT is that fads don't tend to age very well. The novelty started to wear off and people quickly grew tired of it. It's kind of like looking back at those frosted tips you were rocking in 1999. You loved them back then, but the passage of time can be cruel. The other challenge that Chrysler had is how do you make updates to retro styling? Not much changed in the 10 years of PT Cruiser production. Aside from a small core group of enthusiasts, a lot of PT Cruisers are now in the hands of those that simply require utilitarian and functional transportation. Though this convertible has a slightly different story. These are a bit more rare, manufactured only between 2005 and 2008. I wonder if a broader enthusiasm of these vehicles will ever rebound. Will we eventually have nostalgia for the early 2000s vehicles that were selling the nostalgia of the 30s and 40s? Double nostalgia? Meta nostalgia? It could happen. So, does the PT Cruiser deserve the love? Sure, if you love the retro design, the vintage flair, don't feel bad about it. Be open in your love for the PT Cruiser. Does the PT Cruiser deserve the hate? Does this shirt deserve the hate? Yeah, kinda. If you hate the design, I totally get it. It's not my thing either. It's deeply uncool to a whole lot of people. But intrinsically, the PT Cruiser is not a bad car. Did it deserve to win Car of the Year in 2001? Probably not. But is it awful? Clearly not. It's fine, acceptable, practical, usable transportation with a lighthearted design. Sure, they're not the most reliable vehicles out there, but they're certainly not the least reliable. Was Top Gear right in 2013 when they said this was the worst car in the last 20 years? No. Clearly, they forgot about the 6th generation Chevy Malibu. Now that's not a good car. There's a core group of enthusiasts that think this convertible is one of the coolest vehicles ever made, that it will be the 65 Mustang convertible of the 2040s, which to that, I offer you a hearty chuckle. No. But I will leave you with this. With the PT Cruiser, especially this convertible, some people see tacky nostalgia where others see charm. I'm somewhere in the middle. Would I own one? Probably not. But even with Chrysler's massive misstep in recognizing the correct audience, there is something to be appreciated here. With its great practicality, the PT wagon was better at being a crossover than many modern crossovers. And this convertible was a fun vehicle that offered older folks and those old at heart a warm, fuzzy feeling of nostalgia. And with that, I think I finally understand the appeal. If you like this video, please consider subscribing and hitting that bell icon so you can get notified of all my new and used car reviews and updates on my fleet of weird, obscure, and mostly broken 80s and 90s vehicles. Thanks so much to Manny for letting me borrow his PT Cruiser convertible for a day. Thanks so much for watching. See you later.
Chrysler PT Cruiser. Come on here, somebody. Retro to neo, just one bounce. PT Cruiser. Chrysler.